Welcome back, everybody. This is the Level Up Podcast, where you learn how to go from agent to entrepreneur. We have a super fun conversation. Greg Harrelson is back with us. This is early 2020. We're recording this, and we're talking about discipline, but not in the way you think. Because, Greg, you have said something very interesting to me, and I don't believe it. I didn't believe it at first. I'm starting to get the sense of it now. But you mentioned discipline because I think of you as a very disciplined person. You don't think of yourself that way. I don't understand it, but give me your perspective first of all. When you think about yourself and being disciplined, how do you look at yourself?
So I would say I'm probably one of the least disciplined individuals that you could know. Now, that's a big statement. Let's just say within my circle of friendships, business or personal friendships, I feel like I probably have the least amount of discipline out of all of them.
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
I absolutely do. I mean, my wife would tell you that.
Really?
My best friends would tell you that. Everyone would tell you. I'm the guy that, I won't change the oil in my car. Not that I mean physically.
Right.
I could give a shit about them. The engine's about ready to blow up. I just don't follow those schedules. I don't do the things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay.
So yeah, I am awful at discipline. But
that's interesting. I'm the same way with the car stuff. Like anything that doesn't directly feed into business and making progress, I am wildly uninterested in doing those types of things. And it takes a lot of discipline to make myself do them. So that's an interesting comparison. But within the business itself, I think you appear to everyone else. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that are the same way. Like you have a routine, you have a structure, you execute that routine and that structure. And we talked about it on our last episode. Just like you wake up every day hungry, you wake up every day kind of feeling like you're starting from zero, and you attack the day.
Yes.
So I think people look at that and they look at the outcome of it, which is that you go through your day and you execute that day and you execute your routines, and they go, oh, that Greg is very disciplined.
Yes.
But you don't look at it that way. So I'm curious, like when you think about the environment you've built. Yeah. So you've done something very different. What did you do to make up for that?
Well, so to me, it's not about being disciplined. For me, it's about protecting myself from being undisciplined. It's protecting myself. Like me lacking discipline in my mind is just it is. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now that I know it's a truth, as best as we could say something as a truth. It's a truth in my world. Okay. Now, what am I going to do about it? Mm-hmm. How am I going to succeed when I know that I lack that one quality?
Right.
And I got all kinds of notes here. You talk about my routine. I get up, I go to the gym, but you'll never see me going to the gym by myself. I get up, I go to the gym, and I meet my gym partner. Okay. Then I go home.
Okay.
And then I do the things that I do at home. I get up, go to the office, and I walk straight up the stairs, and I go to a place where 30 or 40 other agents within my operations are. I show up there. Okay. So you notice how I'm creating a support system in everything I do. I'll give you one other example. I haven't told you this because we haven't talked in a while, but I have declared and committed to completing an Ironman in 2020. That's a big deal for me. Yes, I've done half Ironmans. Yes, I've done marathons, and I've done all of those, like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Now I just turned 50 in January. So, hey, I made it. And I'm like, okay, I'm 50 now. Let me go ahead and do something that I've never done. Like while I'm 50, let's just do something I've never done. Let me go push myself. So I'm sitting here watching somebody on stage called the Iron Cowboy talk about his story and how he did 50 Ironmans in 50 straight days across the country in every state. And I'm pretty damn inspired, right? 50 days, 50 states, 50 Ironman distances. Pretty inspired. I'm like, screw it. I'm doing Ironman this year. Now, we probably all have those moments, right? We're inspired in the moment. Screw it. But when I said screw it, Before the guy had gotten off the stage, I had already got 3 other people to commit to doing it. I had already called my coach, Stu Middleman, which is an endurance coach that I've used for many, many years in everything big that I've done, mountain climbing or marathons or things like that. I called him. I said, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do it, in November. What do you think? He's like, I'm in. I hired a coach. I got 3 other people that I knew would probably be into something like this. I inspired them. And then all 3 of us made a commitment that if you don't start the race, because you can't control finishing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
If you don't start, you owe $5,000. So if I don't start the race on November 9th in Florida, I have to pay them $5,000. So think about that. I created an environment. I enrolled others to do something extraordinary. I got financial commitment and accountability structures in place, and I hired a coach. Now, at that point, and now I'm on the podcast talking about it.
Right.
So guess what? People are going to say, hey, man, how are you doing on that Ironman?
That's true.
I just created a scenario that's going to require me to do certain activities. It's not that I'm disciplined enough to do an Ironman. I'm smart enough to acknowledge that I lack the discipline to train for an Ironman, but I'm not going to let my lack of discipline cheat me out of the extraordinary things that life has to offer me. I'm going to actually work with my life and figure out how can I perform based on these character flaws. And the way that I have to do it is create an environment. So when people look at my company, people don't understand that my whole company was based on me creating an environment to protect me, to make sure that I showed up and prospected. That's why I got people in one room prospecting all the time, because I created that in order to make sure I had a reason to show up. Because if they weren't there, I wouldn't have showed up.
If you don't mind taking me back to the early days, how long did it take you to, especially with prospecting phone calls, for example, did you have a partner in the very early days, or how long did it take you to figure out that that's part of the structure you needed to build around yourself to make sure that you showed up every day and did the things that you wanted to commit to?
Yeah. So if anybody knows the story from when I first started, I started out as a prospector for my dad. Okay. So, I got dad who's like, you got to work more hours or you'll never get ahead in life. Right. So you got that kind of dad, you got to work more to get ahead. And he was my boss as I'm actually making calls for him. So day one, I had that structure. Now I didn't set up that structure. I found myself inside of that structure with somebody that was like, you better show up. You better show up. I showed up at 8 o'clock. I'm late. If I didn't prospect for 3 hours, I could work 12 hours in the day. But if I didn't prospect for 3 hours, it didn't count as a day worked.
That's good. That's really good.
If you're not generating, you can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was kind of how the communication was between my dad and I. So I would say I found myself in that situation. Then I quickly, within probably a year, found the Mike Ferry coaching program. And I got involved, and then I had my first coach. And from the day that I hired Mike Ferry for 20 to 23 years straight, there was never a month that I didn't have a Mike Ferry coach in 20 plus years. There's times that I had a Tony Robbins coach and a Mike Ferry coach. So I had multiple coaches at times, but I always had a coach. So I started that really early on because I felt like I need somebody to hold me accountable.
Yeah. Interesting. So you recognize the value of the structure early on, and now you're doing the same thing for your agents, and you're helping create a structure for them where they show up and do the same thing, right? The structure that's provided to you. It's interesting because there's so much, the Ironman story, there's so much in there that I could unpack. I want to really quickly ask you, because I love the fact that by the time the guy was off the stage, you'd already made most of the arrangements. That makes so much sense to me. When you looked at your schedule, because obviously an Ironman takes a lot of time commitment because it's an endurance race. So you have to train for endurance, right? That means an ongoing weekly commitment. Did you immediately think of who can I enroll that can show up physically and do this with me in my local area? Because it's one thing to have accountability. That's a call. That's a weekly thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not there. Did you immediately think of who can I get to join me physically to do this?
Yeah, well, first, the first thing is I need to get somebody that'll agree to write a check for $5,000 if they don't show up. Oh, because
Okay.
once somebody has to write a $5,000 check for not showing up and starting the race, then there's a lot of other dominoes that'll fall in place right from there. Like, let's go to the most severe accountability, structure, and
Yeah.
then we'll worry about all the small details later on. And
Okay.
look, if those guys want to show up and not actually train, and then show up so they don't have to pay the 5,000. That's cool too. They won't do that. I wouldn't.
Right.
I wouldn't normally pick anybody that would probably have that type of attitude or mindset towards it. So the key is the first place I went there. The second place I went with is like I don't know what I don't know, so let me go hire one of the best in the country.
Right.
Okay. So I don't even know what I'm getting into. So let me go ahead and warp speed into having all the knowledge that I need. So then I hired Stu Middleman. Okay. Who, by the way, is like holds world records in endurance sports still today, even though he's like 70 years old. So I went straight to like the source.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then when I got back to the market or got back to my home, I started looking for people. Okay. Like one of the guys that's 22 years old in my office, he swims with me. I'm in the pool 2 days a week. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he swims with me on those 2 days. I then go and, get my new bike and make sure, because you're right, there's a lot of time involved, right? So I get my bike, I get one of those CycleOps trainers, and because I know that it's going to be cold in the winter, I probably won't want to go out in 25-degree weather and ride bikes at like 3 in the morning, and do a 3-hour ride or something like that. So then what I did is I made sure it was okay with the family, and I got a really nice bike, the bike that I'm going to actually use in the race, put that on the trainer, and then I can actually do that for 3 hours in the house right there in the dang living room.
Mm-hmm.
Got to get approval on that. Got approval. But so I immediately start figuring out how are we going to make this work.
Right.
Like at this point, once we signed up and the 5,000 is paid and I hired the coach, then you just automatically start figuring out how to make things work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's amazing how quickly when you make the commitment, the how shows up. It's when you're trying to figure out how before you make the commitment that you end up having the problem. You got to commit and then you back into the how. The people that want to know how before, they're gonna advertise themselves as I'm responsible and I just like to know and I want to make sure it's right, and bullshit. You're just afraid to commit.
Right.
It's a resistance.
Okay.
Wow, that was a different discussion.
Yeah, no, I have one final question for you before we get to that, because I might throw you off with this question. We're about to find out. Before I do that, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Oh, you're gonna ask me that, and then you're gonna like take a punch at me, right?
Something. Okay. No, not a punch at you. No, go ahead.
Hey, the best way to connect with me is through Facebook Messenger. Always the best way.
Yeah. And then go to the leveluppodcast.com, go leave a rating and review and all that fun stuff. Go grab the podcast either on YouTube or the website or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the fun places. So here's the question. And no, it's not a punch at you, by the way.
I know.
No, I'm curious because you're such a big fan of the book, Becoming the Solution. And you even mentioned be the solution. And I've noticed now that I've read most of it, I noticed the language pop up even just in our conversation before we hit record. So I'm curious, it's been a while since you did your triathlon. You probably don't think of yourself as a triathlete, right? And then one of the first steps in the book is to decide for whatever you want, who is the person I have to be to get that. So when you think about, like, first of all, did that go through your mind? And do you think about that in the process of kind of figuring out how all this works? Do you think it's going to change your perception of you to where you start to, like a month in, you start to consider, no, this is like, I'm a triathlete in training. Do you start to think of yourself differently?
Yeah, I believe so. So I don't think it crossed my mind. I don't think the question, who do I have to be, crossed my mind in this scenario. Mm-hmm. I think what came across my mind, I'm already that person. I'm just not being them at that moment. So to me, it's like, what am I waiting for? It wasn't like, who do I have to be? It's like, I'm already that person. It's like, what the hell am I waiting for?
That's interesting. Okay.
What am I
Well, I
waiting
guess that
for?
makes sense. Yeah, because you already had that kind of built into your identity from doing like marathons and half triathlons in the past. So that was already part of the way that you looked at yourself and the way that you thought yourself. You thought of yourself as an athlete, as an
Yeah,
endurance
I
athlete.
don't know that I actually, I'll back that up a little bit. I don't necessarily think that I'm saying, well, I'm already an athlete.
Hmm.
Quite frankly, and I surely hope people that are real, truly superior athletes in these endurance sports will respect what I'm getting ready to say. I don't necessarily think it's going to take me being a great athlete in order to do the Ironman.
Hmm.
It's going to take me having the strongest mindset that one can have that's going to get me through these events.
Mm.
It's going to be the mental side, not
Yeah.
the physical side. And meaning like at the moment when I'm, getting off the bike after 110 miles and starting to run a marathon, and I say to myself, what the hell am I doing?
Right.
Like I need to make sure that when I say, what the hell am I doing, that I have an answer for that.
Hmm.
Because if I say, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And I can't answer that question, and I got 26 miles of running in front of me, I'm probably going to be a mess.
Yeah.
When I sit there and say, what the hell am I doing? I need to say, what do you mean? What the hell are you doing? You know what the hell you're doing.
Hmm.
You are doing something spectacular. You are doing something most people don't think you can do. You are actually shining the light on some activity that's going to inspire other people to actually take on things that are extraordinary for their own selves. That's what you're doing. You're actually inspiring people. You're leading people. Like that's the conversation that must go through my head when I start to struggle.
Hmm.
To me, that's who, if we're going to go back and say, who do you have to be? I have to be mentally tough.
That's interesting. Yeah, the identity thing is interesting to me because the whole show, we talk about going from agent to entrepreneur. And that's not just something that you do. It's not just a set of daily activities. You approach real estate mentally different than virtually anyone else in the business. You do not, even though your sales skills are really, really good and you have a prospecting mentality, you do not approach real estate as a salesperson. You approach real estate as a business person, as an entrepreneur. And if there's, and hopefully the people that have been listening to the show, and the more that you do listen to the show, that's what I would like people to take away from it, is that going from agent to entrepreneur is not just a change in the routine of the things that you do. It's a change in identity.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Good
So
point.
anyway,
Yeah.
all right. That's all I've got for you, Greg.
By
Thank
the
you. Sorry.
way, could I just say one thing just to give a
Yeah.
shout out? Do you know Dan Grebe?
I know the name. I don't think he
Yeah,
and I have
Dan,
connected.
he's out in Florida. And Dan Grebe, so I first met him with GoBundance years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
and respectfully, the guy was a bit overweight, and he looked like he was probably in terrible condition, shape,
Mm-hmm.
physically.
Mm-hmm.
But man, in the last, I'm going to say 5 years, maybe it's 4 years, that guy has transformed. I mean, he is doing Ironmans. I mean, the other day he ran like one race on Thursday or Wednesday, then a 5K on Thursday, a half marathon, I think on Friday, and then a full marathon on Saturday. I mean, like the guy is like this extraordinary, in my mind, endurance athlete. The guy
Mm-hmm.
shifted his mindset. And for something that I would think this guy could probably never do this guy is crushing it.
Wow.
And it's all just a shift. Only reason I say this is I brought up the Ironman because Dan, if you hear this, you're one of the people that I think about as I'm struggling or I'm trying to make these commitments and I'm trying to show up and doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. I keep thinking it's like, man, but look what Dan did.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to give him a little bit of props on that. And if anybody hears this that does know Dan, send him a text, a message or something like that and just tell him I said that because I do appreciate his inspiration.
Yeah, love it. Well, Greg, as always, it's a pleasure. I love doing the solo episodes with you, and hopefully everybody gets a lot of enjoyment out of them, and hopefully it's super useful and beneficial as much as it is to me to be on the episodes with you. So as always, thank you.